So, Tyler, it's been real snowy around here recently.
Still
Cars.
talking snow.
It's
It's been
January.
it's been bad.
It's been bad. It's supposed to be worse. People sliding everywhere, driving. We've had some personal experience with that.
Personal problems in the sliding department.
Yeah, but okay, nothing hurt.
Yeah,
Just
we're
went for
all
a
in
li-
one piece.
we
Both
just
of
went.
us are in one piece.
Yeah, just went for a little slide. I was by myself. Tyler was not with me. If you
Surprisingly.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a cold one. We're actually having winter time for the first time in a number, like a real winter.
Yeah, there was like one time when we were in like elementary school where we got like a week off of snow, and we haven't had anything like that since. It's been like
Not that
mild
crazy.
winters ever since then.
Yeah. But welcome everybody to Life the Complete Story. I am Alex. I'm one of your hosts, along with Tyler.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are going to continue our talks on the anguilliforms, which we had started last week. But we're going to first, before we get into that, as we always do, little nature in the news. So Tyler found us an article today. Tyler, you want to take her away?
Right. So today we're talking octopi. We talked about octopi a while ago when we did our mollusks episodes. The cephalopods. Octopi are smart, really kind of like fluid in their movement. And this article today talks about why they might have such impeccable motion, like motor skills. So they have segmented nervous systems to power their movements. So this new research from the University of Chicago says that their circuitry for their nervous system is segmented, which so each arm has its own like mini nervous system that controls all of its suckers and all of its motion.
Okay. That is, I know learning about them before, it's like they pretty much have a similar, not quite the same as starfish, where it's like they have that ring of nerves and each arm, but I know octopi, most of their nervous system is in their arms.
Yeah, so the nerves, there's more nerves within their 8 arms than there are in their entire their brain area.
That's a good time.
And that's called the axial nerve cord that kind of snakes its way back and forth between each arm. So it goes up to the tip, back down to the base, up to the next tip, back down to the base.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so really, this is found mostly in octopi, but occasionally in squids, like the longfin inshore squid.
Okay.
But yeah, this article from the University of Chicago really just highlights how in depth a octopus nerve system is in its segmentation and just expanse. Really quick little article. No more than a couple paragraphs, really.
Okay, that is pretty neat. Just learning that little bit more about octopi and how they do their thing, how they've evolved. Very neat.
That'll run us into our lesson for the day. We're going to continue our anguilliforms. Keep talking about the eels. We covered the orders, or the suborders, Clopsordae and Anguillidae, the first half of Anguillidae, I guess, right? No,
I think we covered it all.
We covered it all, and we covered Synaphobranchidae as well.
Correct.
So today we'll be covering Morainoidae, which are the moray eels. They're going to be a little bit more in depth. They're kind of special when it comes to eels. Most other eels follow the same general body plan. Morays are a little bit different, not too much. They look the same, just a little bit different within their mouth parts we're going to cover.
Yeah, I do not have a picture of that, but when we get there, I'll pull one up.
Yeah, and we're going to cover the suborder Congroidae today, too. Those are congers, garden eels, duckbill eels, and things of that nature. But, Alex, you wanna kick us off on the morays? What makes a moray a moray?
Yeah, sir. Let me pull up the notes here for this bad boy. So, primarily, we're looking at the suborder Morainoidae, which is, of course, under the order of anguilliforms. So there's 9 families within this suborder. We have Heternchellidae, which are the mud eels, native to the Atlantic, Mediterranean, and the Eastern Pacific. So probably more of that, the Atlantic, the Eastern Atlantic, maybe, and with the Mediterranean, but then also the Western United States. So kind of a funky distribution. Usually you would expect them to be like Eastern Atlantic, Western Pacific, but that is not for me to judge. But they are primarily bottom-dwelling eels that are adapted to burrow into soft mud. They have large mouths and no pectoral fins, and they get about 13 to 60 inches in length, so that's about 1 to 5 feet in length, or 32 to 149 centimeters. And there are 8 species in 2 genera recognized in this family. And the oldest member of this family is the Arkansas, mouthful, which were found in the south central United States from fossilized otoliths, which are pretty much calcified structures like their bones and everything. Next, we have the family of the Myrocongridae, or actually the Myroconger eels. These are also known as the thin eels. And there's only one genus within this family, which is Myroconger, and there's not a lot known about them. Until recently, there's really only a single specimen, but they and that individual had been caught off of St. Helena, which I believe is an island near Australia? No, it's in the Atlantic off of the western coast of Africa. Sorry, I was not even close. And that was in 1868, but then in the 1990s and the 2000s, using deep sea submersibles, scientists were able to identify a number of additional individuals from that first species, as well as 4 further species. And the first known species, which is Myroconger compressus, is a bright red color, but not all the other species share that trait. And there are now currently, there is a 6th species, so there are 6 recognized species right now, the most recent being identified in 2021, which is Myroconger peachy. There's not much on them, but
No, not a lot of these have common names either.
No, only 2 though. The first one talked about it was called the red eel, probably from that bright red color, and then there's another one, Myroconger nigrodentalis, which is called the orange eel. But like I said, the fact that they had to use deep sea submersibles to even find a number of these species is probably their deep sea group. Not a lot is really known about them because of that. And
Right.
then
So that's going to bring us into the family Morainidae,
correct,
which would be our legitimate moray eels.
Yes, sir. So, let me bring up my picture here real quick. There we go.
So as we said, moray eels kind of follow that same body plan as normal eels. Long, extended body, minimal anal fin, kind of is just one long caudal fin. The anal fin and the dorsal fin are morphed into that caudal fin, making one long fin in the rear. In the morays, there's 15 genera with about 200 species within them, almost entirely marine. However, there are a couple found in that brackish water, that salty freshwater, kind of like at mouths of streams and stuff. And there's a couple freshwater species as well.
I do have that picture of the mouth whenever we get there.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, morays they secrete this mucus over top of their skin. They don't really have scales; they're pretty scaleless, so they use that mucus as kind of their protective layer, since they don't have a harder scale. And in some species, that's toxic. Most often, in those brighter color species that we'll talk about. And it kind of, since they don't have scales, that mucus kind of allows them to maneuver through the rocky home areas a little bit better than if they were scaled. And as Alex was talking about, they have a pharyngeal jaw in the back. Perfect. So as you can see in this image, they have their normal jaws, but they kind of have a second set of jaws in their pharynx that, as they open their mouth, extends forward and is used to grasp their prey.
Kind of acts like a ratcheting system, so it helps pull the prey even further into the throat as they bite down and close their mouths, because you
Right.
can see the pharyngeal jaw goes fairly far back.
Yeah. So some fish species use that suction power to suck up their prey into their mouth. So they don't need a very deep mouth per se. It's just to generate enough structure so that the fish enough suction so the fish can just kind of get sucked up into the digestive system. But since the morays use that pharyngeal jaw, they have to have a deeper mouth area so that A, the jaws can rest in it whenever the mouth is closed, and B, so that they can fit their prey into their mouth before they swallow it.
Correct.
And in some species, the front row of teeth can kind of fold in on themselves, kind of like in some snake species, which only when they're feeding though, so that there's more space for their prey. Alex, where do morays live?
They can live actually in both fresh and salt water, but the vast majority of them are strictly marine, and there's only a few species that are known to live just in fresh water. But they live just about worldwide through tropical and temperate oceans, primarily in a nearshore habitat or continental slopes, shelves, but they can also live in some deep benthic and mesopelagic zones of the ocean. The vast majority of them are in a tropical and subtropical environment, so as you get closer to the equator, warmer water, but there are some, such as the yellow moray, that are found in those more temperate, cooler ocean waters as you get further away from the equator. And then, as we talked about, this is one of our biggest groups of eels. There are 16 genera with over 200 known species. So this is known species, and these are all further subdivided into two subfamilies, which in one there are, I think, 11 genera, and then the other there are 5 genera. So, and they've been discovered as long ago as the 1700s, the 1750s, described by Linnaeus, who we have talked about a little bit in the past, the father of taxonomy. And some as recently as the mid-2000s, the mid-late 2000s, a new family was described.
Yeah, so we're not going to cover each individual species. If you want that, send us an email, let us know in a comment, and one of us can kind of sit down in the studio and kind of do a deep dive into just morays. And it's something I might do without asking. Who knows? Depends on how much time I get. But we'll cover the genus. So there's Diaphenculus, which is that newest genus that Alex was talking about. They're mud-dwelling morays. The genus Echidna, which has a couple species in it. And Enchelicor, Enchelinassa, Gymnomurana, Gymnothorax, Monopenchulus. Murana is the oldest genus. That was the one that Linnaeus described way back in 1758. Pseudechidna is the next one. Rhinomurana is the ribbon eels. Strophodon, and then in the subfamily, those were all in the subfamily Muranae, and then in the subfamily Euopterogeny, you have Anarchius, Canomurana, Sirimaxilla, Scudicaria, and Euopterygius.
Quite a mouthful.
Quite a mouthful. One thing to note, morays are popular in some of the more advanced aquarium hobbyists. And by advanced, I mean you don't just keep a betta fish or a goldfish in a small little tank. You actually have a 100-gallon tank or so. You know how to do your salt water. And then other species, some species are known to have high levels of ciguatoxin, which can result in ciguatera. This is kind of a food poisoning toxin found in some reef fish. Alex, if you'd like me to share here we go. Let's take a peek. That's seguatoxin.
Yeesh.
That's a lot of rings.
That is a lot of very big rings.
Yeah, Alex and I both took organic chemistry, and this is quite the doozy of a compound.
Yes, yes, sir. That is putting it lightly.
But that's gonna cover a talk on morays for the day. Unless you want to cover anything else, Alex.
That's all I got for the morays. That'll bring us to the next group, which is Congroideae. Let me get
Yes.
to the notes for these guys. So that is the suborder of the conger eels, in which there are 6 families, all being described a little longer ago than some of the morays. Let me pull up a picture here real quick to show you a specimen of a conger eel. Bingo. So to start with, we have the family Colocongridae, which are the short-tail eels, or the worm eels.
They look kind of goofy.
They are a little funky looking. They got big, goofy eyes. That is not what this one is. This is just a generic conger eel that I have pulled up here. The Colocongers, it's a single genus in this family, found in tropical waters in the Atlantic, Indian, and West Pacific Oceans. Typically bottom-dwelling fish, 300 to 900 meters, or about 1,000 to almost 3,000 feet deep. And compared to other eels, they have relatively short, stubby bodies with blunt snouts. So they have a much more fish-like head rather than a snake-like head. And there are 10 known species in this group. Next is the family Derichthyidae, which are the long neck or narrow neck eels.
Huh.
These are more, they're goofy because they have a very snake-like head, not just the head, but
have
the
a
neck
thick,
as well.
They have a thick body portion that kind of skinnies out in the neck and head.
Yeah. These are actually more pelagic fish that kind of found in the middle and deeper parts of most of the oceans. They're distinguished by a series of stripes on the head that form actually a sensory system, actually. But they are the two genera in this family are quite different. The genus Derichthys has the long, narrow neck and large eyes, while the genus Nesarhamphus is a more long, flattened snout. But they both grow to be about 2 feet or 60 centimeters in length. And as I said, there are 2 genus with 3 species. Derichthys has 1, Derichthys serpentinus, and then Nesarhamphus has Nesarhamphus danae and Nesarhamphus engulfianus. Our next family is Ophichthidae. Goodness.
Yep, that'll
These
work.
are close enough.
Today.
Man.
These are the snake eels.
These are the snake eels, yes, sir. So these are more burrowing eels, and they are named because they look very much like snakes. They have long cylindrical bodies.
Do you have an image for this?
I do not, but I can pull. If you want to pull one up, or I can pull one up real quick.
I do have one.
Okay, because I forget exactly what this image was. The image I had pulled up there, I believe it is just a generic conger eel,
Correct.
which we will have a little bit. I have a better picture for that one for later. So, yeah, so that is the snake eel. At least one of them. So they have a very wide range of habitats, tropical to warmer temperate waters. They can live at coastal shallows and actually even up into rivers and down to depths below 800 meters or 2,600 feet. Typically, they're bottom dwellers, though, hiding in the mud or sand and capturing their prey, which are typically crustaceans and small fish, but there are some that are pelagic or living in that open ocean. They range from about 2 inches to 7.5 feet or 5 centimeters to 2.3 meters. And typically they lack fins altogether, which actually helps them burrow into the substrate more like worms. And they tend to be spotted or striped in color, which helps them mimic venomous sea snakes to deter some predators. And there are a lot of times you actually find these washed ashore after large storms. So there are currently 62 genera for the snake eels. They are divided into two subfamilies, Myrophinae and Ophthalmophynae.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm not going to go through all of these because, we'll just bore you to death. But there are 62 genera in
and
this
most
family.
of these genera have about 1 to 2 species within it.
Correct, yeah. So there's a handful of monospecific genera within here. Next, we'll hop to our family Muranescoideae, which are the pike conger eels. That is the picture
you
I had earlier.
Yes.
So these are found worldwide in tropical and subtropical seas, but there are some that are known to be found in brackish water, so that kind of mixture where freshwater rivers dump into salt water. They have a cylindrical body with scaleless skin and narrow heads with large eyes and very strong teeth. They have dorsal fins that start above their very well-developed pectoral fins, which is a little different for some of the eels that we've seen so far. And they're rather aggressive fish, and they can range anywhere from 2 to 8 feet in length, or about 60 to 250 centimeters. And there are 15 known species in 6 genera, and those genera are Congresix, Dinoponticus, Muranescix, Oxyconger, and Sauromuranesco.
These are terrifying.
They are goofy looking. That crazy looking. That's what that picture that I showed you before was. There's a real good picture.
This is the Congersox talibonidus. They're called pike congers because in their face they have there's really long dagger-like teeth and a really elongated snout, like in most pike species.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. They got some freaky faces though. Next family we have up is Netistomidae, which are the duck-bill eels, or also called the witch eels. I think because that's when they are all straightened out, they kind of look like a witch's hat a little bit. But these eels are typically found along continental slopes in tropical and temperate oceans worldwide. So these aren't just in one of the oceans. These are found around the world. Typically bottom-dwelling fish. Yeah, there you go. Typically bottom-dwelling fish that feed on invertebrates and small fish, and they're pretty slender, as you can see in the image that Tyler's pulled up here. There you go. Zoom her out. They do get kind of long, though, about 125 centimeters or just over 4 feet in length. They have very narrow, skinny heads and large, toothy mouths. And most of the species in this family actually lack those pectoral fins. So that's how they're differentiated by some of the other conger eels. And in the image, you can see that they start very, very slender at the head, with kind of long mouths, and then they widen out as they get further. There are 6 genera in this family, each of them having a handful of species. Most of them have at least 3 or 4, all the way up to about 10 or 11. So fairly well spread out. The genera are Fasciolella, Hoplunus, Netistoma, Nedenschellus, Saurenschellus, and Venefica. So those are your 6 genera for the duck-bill eels.
And the last family
family is the conger eels, is Congridae. So this one is pretty hefty. So this is the family Congridae, which they are subdivided into 3 subfamilies. Yeah, because those top ones are extinct. So 3 subfamilies having about that's the picture I actually had. So way to go, Tyler.
I got you.
Yeah, all over it. So these are also called garden eels. They're typically considered very valuable, and they are large food fishes, especially because the garden eels tend to live in colonies protruding from the seafloor after the way like plants are in a garden. So that's why they're called garden eels. And so there are 220 species in 32 genera. So I will not go through all of the genera for you. I will go over this image here is a artist rendition of the European conger eel, which is conger, real
Very hard to
technical.
say.
Yes.
Very hard.
So it is the largest eel in the family of conger eels, and actually a lot of the Anguilliforms order that it is included in, they have found specimens that are up to 3 meters or just under 10 feet long, weighing up to 350 pounds or 160 kilograms. So they can get very large. Found around the world, tropic, subtropical, and temperate seas. So not pretty well distributed. They do have some very distinguishing features, such as they lack scales, and a lot of them actually do possess those pectoral fins. And they typically feed on crustaceans and small fish. And those some earliest of these fossils were found from the Campanian of the United States, which is it appears to be kind of a I'm
Age.
trying
It's
to
an
say,
age
is it
during
an
the
age?
Cretaceous.
Okay, it is an age during the Cretaceous, kind of right before the end of the Cretaceous, about 80 million years ago. Yeah, so that late Cretaceous is where a lot of them have been found, but there have been some that have been found in the Paleogene, which is a little bit later in Europe. So that's a little bit more recently. And as I said, there is a whole boatload of genera, 220 species. We're not going to go through all of them. There are a handful of monospecific genera, but then there are some that get up to 20, 22, 20, 24 species, on almost 40 species in a genera. So they are pretty widespread. The three subfamilies, I will list those, is Bathymerinae, Congrinae, and Heterocongrinae. So pretty widely distributed eels throughout the world. But that will bring us to the end of our discussion on eels. Finally,
We did it! Yay!
woo!
One thing to
Goodness.
note: this is the end of our discussion on. Hold on a second, I lost it. Elopomorphs. Those are the.
Oh,
So that would be our 10-pounders and tarpons, our bonefish, our deep sea spine eels, and our true eels that we have been covering these past few weeks.
whew. Yeah, the Elopomorpha, our super order.
Yeah. So
Goodness.
that means next week we'll move on into the next super order, Otocephala.
Goodness gracious.
But we're not done yet. We still have our normal stuff to cover today. We're
Yes,
just kind of
sir,
giving
we
you a
do.
So I'll start, Alex. I'll give you a little breather. We'll talk
Much appreciated.
about our amazing species for today.
All right, I already got a picture, and it's a good one.
Today's amazing species is the Andean bear. First of all, let me say that I love the Andean bear. It is the last long-nosed. It's a different type of bear than like the grizzly, the black bear, and stuff like that. It's in a different genus, I think.
Oh, let me see if I have. Let me do a little googling. The Andean bear, or it's also called the spectacled bear.
Yeah, it's the last short-faced bear, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the Andean short-faced bear is what it's sometimes called.
Yeah, but most often we call it the spectacled bear.
Yes.
Because they kind of have these white patches on their face, which in many patterns look like they have little glasses around their eyes, and they're just cool. They're really cool. This one is Tremarctos ornatus, the Andean bear, also known as the spectacled bear. They live in the Andes Mountains along the western coast of South America, in like Colombia, Ecuador, Chile, Peru, things of that nature. There's about anywhere from 2,500 to 10,000 mature individuals with a decreasing population trend, which kind of sticks them in the vulnerable category.
Yeah, I mean,
Last assessed in 2016, published in 2017.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I know at least in parts of that part of the world, there are difficult areas to really inhabit because they're so mountainous. Obviously, people have and continue to inhabit those areas, but I think a lot of those areas are being logged. Like
Yeah,
deforestation
there's
is probably
in the assessment they identified about 30% of that habitat as being unsuitable to sustain a population of Andean bear. So, in all honesty, that's not bad compared to some of the other species we've covered in the past 30 so episodes, where you're losing 80 to 90% of your suitable area, and also you're kind of adding an increase of since we are attributing this population loss as humans, you're increasing the amount of human bear conflicts, which is common across all bear species.
yeah.
But Andean bears are a lot more passive than some of the other like American bear species.
They're not quite as large, I don't
No, they're
believe.
pretty small comparatively. And
Yeah.
a bear doesn't beat a gun.
No, I wouldn't. No, they're still about. They may be not quite as big. It's in looking here. I mean, males can weigh up to 400 some pounds.
Yeah, I mean that's still
So
large.
they can still get quite large. They are
That's
they're the largest carnivore in that area of South America, or maybe
your
in South
competition
America.
is the mountain lion,
The jaguar.
the jaguar. So you're facing big cats.
Yeah,
It's really no surprise.
yeah.
Um,
Although it is actually more herbivorous than anything, even though most bear are omnivorous. They'll eat both plants and meat. It tends to be, it is saying here that only about 5% of its diet is meat. It's primarily plant-eating bear.
However, some of the threats this Andean bear is under are non-timber crops, as well as livestock farming and ranching. So that would be like destruction of habitat for agricultural purposes. Roads and railroads, as we industrialize South America more and more, we're creating more infrastructure to transport logs, timber products, whatever. Habitat loss there. Climate change. So these guys are found in like the Andes have these really cool like cloud forests that are kind of decreasing in size because the climate is changing. So you're not getting as low of cloud cover or as much cloud cover in general. Right, Alex?
Can you repeat? Sorry, I was looking at pictures of bears.
I was saying how the Andes have the cloud forests.
Oh yeah, and as with climate changing, it's causing it's like less humid in that part of the world. Like it's kind of shifting some of the global wind patterns, which is causing those cloud forests to not be as cloudy, which means there's less rain, it's less humid. Like you said, that cloud cover is moving further up the mountains.
Yeah. So
Causing habitat loss.
Yeah, and that's not exactly our fault, but kind of our fault in a way.
Yeah.
As well as mining and quarrying, and just gas drilling in general, plus hunting and trapping are some normal causes.
Yeah. So I was looking the spectacle bear is it's not quite as big as the American black bear on average, but they're a little bit bigger than pandas. They're probably most comparable to the Asiatic black bear,
which is the sun bear.
I believe no, the sun bear is much smaller. Actually, they're smaller.
Sun bear is tiny.
Yeah,
and kind of dumb looking, to put it nicely.
Yeah, no, they're They are smaller than the American black bear, at least overall size-wise. The American black bear does get fairly large.
Yeah. And then obviously, since the American black bear is the smallest of like the North American bears,
The
therefore it
grizzly
is
bear, the brown bear / grizzly bear, Kodiak bear, the
an,
polar bear, of course, is
the
just
largest
massive.
terrestrial predator.
Yes, the polar bears are enormous.
But these guys are nationally display animals, which I'm not quite sure what that means.
I think you see them a lot in zoos.
I guess, yeah. And locally in medicine, so maybe they use some of the more keratinous, like the claws or the
Yeah,
scales for medicine, which is you don't typically see in like New World species as much, since like Asian medicine is predominantly like shark fin soup, turtle soup, like natural things.
yeah. And I think a lot of that is because they have much older cultures that still persist.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, a lot of the New World cultures were during
the age of
colonial
exploration.
period,
Yeah,
the age of exploration. A lot of those cultures were kind of snuffed out or greatly reduced to the point that they really don't use a lot of these traditional
right.
things anymore.
But luckily, we do have these conservation actions in place. It's been vulnerable since 1982, which it's 2025. That's a long time to be vulnerable. So we're doing
Yeah,
good in
they're
my
not
book on it.
dropping too hard.
We have 58 protected areas across the range, uh, but a lot of these are kind of just like paper parks, which means they basically just have like in writing that says it's a protected area, but there's no like actual
Protection.
enforcing or
Yeah.
staff that does anything because it's the budget just says so. Um,
There's no budget for park rangers and
yeah,
staff things like that. Conservationists.
right. But we have had an increase in like information about like range size, movement patterns, and just general ecologic patterns since we started researching these guys in depth. But that's going to cover today's amazing species once again. That was the Andean bear. I call it the spectacled bear.
Yes. Both
Cool,
correct.
cool stuff. So I'll pass it over to Alex for him to cover our most wanted for the day.
Yes, sir. So our most wanted for this week is a aquatic species of plant that I have personally interacted with. It is the purple loosestrife. It is a plant that is native to Eurasia, so the European Asian continent, um, also known as the spiked loosestrife or purple lythrum. The scientific name is Lythrum salicaria. It is a flowering plant. They do look very beautiful. Those purple spikes of
That's probably
flowers.
why we brought it over.
I believe so. Let's see here. As far as when it was brought over to the Americas, really doesn't say. I think it's been here for kind of a while. But so they can grow about 1 to 2 meters tall, so about 3 feet to almost 7 feet tall. They can form some colonies. You can see there that small clump. They get much larger than that. They can get a number of stems from a single root mass, which tend to be more woody, and they have a bit more herbaceous stems. And the stems will get like a reddish purple and actually be kind of square if you would cut them in half. As I said, they are native to Europe, and Asia, and parts of northwestern Africa. And it has more or less been naturalized in a lot of temperate areas of the world, like southern Africa, even in North and South America. And there may have been some introduced into Australia, but they're not 100% sure yet. They really enjoy kind of wet areas, ditches, meadows, marshes,
So kind of like
wetlands.
the riparians, then, as we talked about last week.
Correct, yeah, and some wetter areas like wetlands. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I had my one internship early in college, the acid mine drainage wetland. There were actually had to remove some because they were in the middle of it. Because problem is they're trying to maintain the wetland and the native wetland vegetation, and it has been known to in North America invade what are called sedge meadows, which tend to be near like oxbow lakes, kind of woodland edge. So still some of those wetter areas, but they have been used as like a medicinal herb to treat some stomach problems. A lot of times they were just ornamental plants. And as I said, it is widely naturalized. A single plant can produce almost 3 million seeds, which is why it's
Is
very
that annually or?
annually,
I
which
guess
is
these guys are
quite a
these
lot.
guys annual or perennial?
I believe they're annual. They might be annual plants, but I'm not 100%. Yeah, because it can sprout from pieces of root left in the soil and water. They're very difficult to remove by mechanical and chemical means. But it is a good example of how we've been able to use some biological control to keep the infestation to kind of a minimum. Starting in the mid 1980s, there was some research and testing done to use some beetle species to control the purple loosestrife because they were already a natural food source for these beetles, and they were able to find 5 beetle species that do significant enough damage to the plant that they were effective biological controls. 2 of them being species of leaf beetles and 3 species of weevil. And they found that infestations of those 2 species of leaf beetle were incredibly effective at wiping out stands of purple loosestrife, typically defoliating most, if not all, of the plants in the area. And there was a moth species that they tried to use, but it itself was a pest, and it fed on a bunch of other different plants. So it really was not good for that biological control. Those beetle species were very good because they targeted just purple loosestrife. So this is an example of an invasive species that has kind of come under control a little bit, but it's still something you don't necessarily want to have, especially if you have a wetland ecosystem that you're trying to promote a lot of native plant species. They do look very nice, though. I will say it's a very bright purple flower.
It is a very pretty flower. All right. Anything else to add?
That is all.
All right. So that'll kick us off into our newest segment. We started it last week.
There we go.
There we go. We're going to talk about the littoral zone today. So, littoral zone is a common term in both oceanography as well as in freshwater ecology. So we'll cover both. We'll start with freshwater zone. That's the picture that Alex has picked out today.
Yes,
so
sir.
The littoral zone in both definitions is that near-shore area where there's a lot of photosynthetically active trophic levels. So most of it stems off of plants, or mostly plants. Like, as you get further offshore, the ecosystem depends more on phytoplankton and algae. But in this area, there's a lot of plants that are still rooted in because it's not super deep that they can't survive. So the littoral zone in freshwater ecosystems covers from the shoreline to about where the plants stop. So about 15 feet deep is where most people define the littoral zone. And then this has the littoral zones are kind of at risk because there's human settlement to shorelines, whether it be docking or just boat launches in general, and just human activity and kind of tramples and destroys those areas. And you disrupt different breeding habitats. So, like turtles, and this last year, Alex and I saw a turtle laying eggs. So we'll kind of go off of this. that turtle lays its eggs in like this near shore, offshore area. Granted, this is a snapping turtle, so it lives primarily in the water. But if this was like a box turtle or something similar to that, it would go back into a forested ecosystem, something of that type. However, separating the pond from the forested area is a quad trail. Luckily, Alex and I and all of Alex's family are fairly environmentally / eco-conscious people, so if we saw a turtle, we'd kind of avoid the turtle on a quad to the best of our abilities. But not everybody's like us. Sorry, side tangent, but it kind of deals with the story a little bit.
Yeah.
The other kind of interference we have for these is damming. So damming is a major I don't know what I want to call it. It's a major problem in terms of maintaining littoral zones, because if you put a dam up, you
change that littoral zone greatly.
Yeah, you're changing the water level. So what used to be
like a new littoral zone is pretty much what
used
happens.
to be littoral zone is now kind of in that aphotic zone, that deep water zone, and your new littoral zone is like what used to be your shoreline, where there was no aquatic life,
or in some cases it was forest, or grassland, or like much larger area depending on the size of the dam.
And there's some areas like in the tropics where you have those seasonal wetlands that kind of flood the forest, but they've adapted to that. This is the dam that you're putting up in a new area where you're not adapted to that kind of flooded area. So now you're upthrowing the entire ecosystem from nearly all regions of this lake. So that's going to cover our freshwater littoral zone in a more oceanographic.
Yeah,
that's the word. or marine biologic definition. You split that littoral zone into 3 separate zones. You have the supra-littoral zone. That's the splash zone. That's kind of like the area of the beach
above high tide.
Where there's still some
get some spray from the wind and the waves, but it's never underwater unless it's like super bad storms.
Yeah. So a lot of times your life you'll see here are going to be like periwinkle, is like or lichens. Other like snails, and so a lot of like snail mollusks or isopods that are detritivores. They'll kind of feed on like the washed up dead stuff in the splash zone.
Yeah. So
then you have.
I said this is where you see things like sand fleas and
a
lot of crabs, a lot of the terrestrial crabs.
Yeah.
You'll see.
Next, you have the littoral zone. That's going to be your intertidal zone. So these are where you see your tide pools, which are some of the more diverse areas of the littoral zone. This is like areas where like the tide is intermittent during like high tide, low tide, and you'll have like the tide pools, which is like areas where the water comes in, but the rocks or whatever has created an area where the water doesn't exactly always get out of it. So you have like starfish, anemone, sea slugs, sea snails, things like that.
Even octopi sometimes.
Yeah. You have barnacles.
Yeah, you see a lot of barnacles in this area.
But to be able to live in this type of environment, you have to be able to adapt to temperature, light, salinity.
You have to be very adaptable.
Yeah.
Able to withstand a lot of different things. So these, as well as your right there above that supra littoral zone, these are tend to be some pretty tough organisms.
Yeah. And the last zone would be the sublittoral zone. So this is like right below the tide pool. This is the area that's always going to be underwater in low tide and high tide. So this is where the sunlight is able to reach the ocean floor, but you're not taking yourself out of the photic zone, which is the area where phytoplankton and like sunlight hits. So this is where there's high primary production, whether it be plants, algae, phytoplankton, whatever, and there's coral. Yeah. So this is where this is like mostly where your reefs are found would be in this region.
Yeah.
But that's gonna cover it for today's ecology encyclopedia. That's what the segment's called.
Yeah.
I forgot for a second.
It's all right. Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. So that'll lead us to the end of the episode. Alex, where can you find us?
You can find us on Facebook at Life the Complete Story, Instagram, TikTok if it's still
Around.
Spotify, yeah. Follow us, give us a like, rate, whatever it is. YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when new episodes come out. As well as like, comment. You can send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com if you've got something a little bit bigger, like a news article or something you want to send us, something a little bit more in depth that you need time to like write out and send to us, so that way you can't fit in like a comment on Facebook or Instagram. But Instagram, you can see we'll post a friend of ours, John, has been doing a great job for us. He posts some amazing species. He'll post some clips from the episodes. And then Facebook, we tend to not post there quite as much. You'll see on occasion some interesting articles that we share, but primarily Instagram is where you see some of that through the week content. But I think I got it all.
That sounds about right to me.
I think I hit it all.
But as always, you guys, learn something new. Keep learning.
Yes,
and
sir.
We'll see you next week.
Absolutely.